The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Its walls were made of pure crystal that sparkled with the light of 1,000 stars. Outside the massive windows, the void of space showed countless ships from different worlds, all coming to pay tribute to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Commander Heijin sat on his throne of black stone. His body was covered in natural armor that looked like metal but was actually part of his skin. The Krillian people were born warriors, and Heijin was the strongest of them all. He was 8 feet tall, and his 4 arms could crush steel like paper. His red eyes glowed as he watched the smaller creatures scurry around below him. Next to him sat Admiral Wusung of the Vorthan Collective. The Vorthans looked almost human, but their heads were larger and their eyes were completely white. They could read minds and control thoughts from across entire star systems. Wusung rarely spoke out loud because he could put his thoughts directly into other minds. When he did speak, his voice sounded like ice-breaking. Captain So-min of the Nexari Federation floated above her seat. Instead of sitting, the Nexari had no solid form and could change their bodies into any shape they wanted. So-min usually kept herself looking like a tall woman made of silver liquid, but sometimes parts of her would shift and flow like water. She could reach into any machine and change its parts just by thinking about it. These 3 species ruled the galaxy together. They had fought great wars long ago, and now they shared power over all the weaker races. There were thousands of other species in the galaxy, but none of them mattered. The Krillians were the warriors, the Vorthans were the mind controllers, the Nexari were the builders. Together they were unstoppable. On this day they had gathered to discuss reports from the Outer Rim territories. Scout ships had found many new worlds with primitive life forms. Most of these discoveries were boring. The Council would either ignore these worlds or send ships to take them over, but today there was something different. A nervous young officer named Young Ho stood before the 3 rulers. He was from a species called the Deltans, who served as clerks and data keepers for the Council. The Deltans were small and gray with large eyes, and they were very good at remembering things and doing math. Young Ho held a datapad in his shaking hands. Admiral Wusung spoke without moving his lips, his voice appearing directly in everyone's minds. "What news do you bring from the outer territories?" Young Ho cleared his throat and began to read from his datapad. "We have discovered a new world called Earth in the Sol system. The planet is inhabited by a species called humans. They appear to be in the early stages of technological development." Commander Heijin laughed, and the sound was like rocks falling. "How early are we talking about? Are they still hitting rocks together?" Young Ho looked at his datapad. "The humans have achieved chemical propulsion and basic electronics. They have not yet developed faster than light travel or energy weapons. Their population is approximately 8 billion individuals." Captain So-min flowed forward slightly. "Only 8 billion? How quaint. Most civilized worlds have at least 50 billion inhabitants. What threat assessment have you given them?" Meng Ho hesitated before answering. "The initial survey team rated them as 0 threat level. They recommend minimal observation protocols." The 3 rulers looked at each other and began to laugh. The sound echoed through the great hall and made the smaller creatures below cover their ears. Heijin slammed one of his 4 fists on his throne arm rest hard enough to crack the stone. 0 threat level, he roared with laughter. "A species that still uses chemical rockets." "What do they fight with? Sharp sticks?" "Actually," Young Ho said quietly, "they do use projectile weapons that fire small metal pieces at high speed. They also have explosive devices and some basic energy weapons." Wusung put his thoughts into everyone's minds again. "Metal projectiles? How absolutely primitive. Do they even have shields?" "No, Admiral, they appear to have no defensive technology beyond physical armor." So-min flowed upward until she was nearly touching the ceiling. "These humans sound like they are still in the Stone Age compared to us. Why are we even discussing them?" Meng Ho looked nervous but continued reading. From his report, there are some unusual characteristics about this species that the survey team noted. "What kind of characteristics?" Heijin demanded. "The humans appear to be extremely adaptable. They live in almost every environment on their planet. From frozen wastelands to burning deserts, they also reproduce very quickly, and their population has grown exponentially in just the last few hundred years." So-min flowed back down to her position. "Many species can adapt to different environments. What Liang Ho swallowed hard, their technological advancement rate is much faster than normal. Most species take millions of years to develop from primitive tools to space travel. The humans have done it in less than 10,000 years. The three rulers stopped laughing. Wusong leaned forward in his chair, and his white eyes seemed to glow brighter. How much faster according to our calculations? If they continue at their current rate, they could develop faster than light travel within the next 100 years. There was silence in the great hall for a moment. Then Heijin waved one of his hands dismissively. 100 years is nothing. We conquered our first star system in less time than that after we developed space flight. But Commander, Young Ho said carefully, the survey team also noted that the humans show unusual behavior patterns when faced with threats. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, they tend to fight back even against overwhelming odds. They also work together in large groups more effectively than most species. Captain So-min made a sound like water bubbling. This is all very interesting, but what does it matter? A species without energy weapons or shields cannot threaten us even if they develop faster than light travel. They will still be centuries behind our technology. Admiral Wusong put his thoughts into the room again. The boy raises some valid points, but So-min is correct. These humans are primitive. They may be fast learners, but they are still thousands of years behind us. I recommend we simply ignore them until they become more advanced. Commander Heijin stood up from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow over the entire area below. I agree. These humans are not worth our time. If they become a problem in a few centuries, we can deal with them. Then 1 Krillian battle cruiser could destroy their entire planet. Tung Ho looked like he wanted to say something more, but he remained silent. The three rulers had made their decision, and arguing would only get him in trouble. So-min spoke for the first time with her actual voice instead of changing her form to create sound waves. Mark their system as low priority observations. Send a monitoring probe to check on them every 50 years. If they develop anything interesting, we can reconsider. The meeting was over. Young Ho bowed deeply and walked backward out of the hall as was required when leaving the presence of the council. The three rulers began discussing more important matters, like tribute collections and rebellions on conquered worlds, but Young Ho was not satisfied with the decision. As he walked through the corridors of the great station, he kept thinking about the data from Earth. The humans were different from other species he had studied. They learned faster, they adapted quicker, and they never gave up fighting back. In his small office, Young Ho pulled up more detailed files about the humans. The survey team had collected thousands of hours of observation data. He spent the rest of the day reading through reports about human wars, human inventions, and human societies. What he found disturbed him. The humans had fought wars that killed millions of their own people, but they had learned from each conflict and became better fighters. Each time they faced a new challenge, they found ways to overcome it. They never seemed to accept that something was impossible. As the artificial night cycle began on the station, Young Ho was still reading. He found reports about humans who had survived in conditions that would kill most other species. He read about their art and music and stories that showed they could imagine possibilities that did not yet exist. Most disturbing of all, he found evidence that humans had already begun to suspect they were not alone in the universe. Their scientists were searching for signals from other worlds, and their governments were making plans for what they would do if they met alien life. Young Ho made a decision that would change everything. He began to compile a detailed report about the real threat that humans represented, but he knew that the council would not listen to a lowly data keeper. He would need to find another way to make them understand. As he worked through the night, Young Ho did not know that far away on the small blue planet called Earth, a human scientist named Diane was also working through the night. She had just made a breakthrough in quantum physics that would allow her people to bend space and time. The galaxy's apex predators had dismissed their future prey as harmless primitives. They had no idea that their days of absolute power were numbered. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council decided to ignore the humans. The great rulers had forgotten about the small blue planet and gone back to their normal business of controlling their vast empire, but the humans had not forgotten about the galaxy. Captain Haiyan Wu stood on the Bridge of the Souls, pride looking out at the massive gas giant called Jupiter. His ship was humanity's first real attempt at deep space exploration. It was small compared to the warships that ruled the galaxy, but it was fast and it carried the hopes of 8 billion people, the souls. Pride had been traveling through the outer planets of the solar system for 2 weeks, taking measurements and collecting data. Everything had gone according to plan until today, when the ship's sensors detected something that made everyone on board hold their breath. There was another ship out there. It was huge, at least 10 times bigger than the Soul's Pride, and it was moving toward them at incredible speed. The alien vessel looked like it was made of black metal with red lights glowing along its hull. It was clearly a warship, and it was clearly not from Earthian Wu. Had been a military officer before he became a space explorer. He had fought in 3 wars, and he knew danger when he saw it, but he also knew that this moment would change everything for humanity. This was first contact with an alien species. The alien ship came alongside the Soul's Pride and stopped the humans could see weapons ports along its hull that could destroy their small ship in seconds. But Hyun Woo gave the order to send a peaceful greeting message using radio waves and mathematical symbols. The response came in perfect Korean, which shocked everyone on the bridge. A deep voice spoke through their communication system. "We are the Krillian Empire. You will prepare to be boarded for inspection, Sub-Commander." Tae-young materialized on the bridge of the Soul's Pride along with 4 other Krillian warriors. The aliens were enormous, with natural armor covering their bodies and 4 arms that looked like they could tear metal apart. Their red eyes glowed as they looked around at the human ship. Tae-young had expected to find terrified primitives cowering in fear. Instead, he found humans who stood calmly at their posts. Captain Hyun Woo stepped forward and bowed slightly in greeting. "Welcome to our ship," he said. "I am Captain Hyun Woo of Earth. We come in peace." Tae-young laughed, and the sound was like rocks grinding together. "Peace is not something you get to choose. Primitive, your species has been discovered by the Galactic Council. You will come with us for processing." But instead of showing fear, Hyun Woo asked questions. "What is the Galactic Council? How many species are part of it? What are your intentions toward humanity?" The question surprised Tae-young. Most species either begged for mercy or tried to fight when they met the Krillians. But these humans seemed genuinely curious about the galaxy around them. Engineer Jin-ae was studying the aliens with obvious fascination. "How do you generate the energy for faster than light travel?" she asked. "What materials is your armor made from? Can you teach us about your technology?" The Krillian warriors looked at each other in confusion. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, and they had never met a species that responded to domination with curiosity. Usually conquered people were too afraid to ask questions. Chief Science Officer Kyung-ho was taking readings with his instruments. "Your ship uses some kind of quantum field manipulation for propulsion," he said. "That suggests you understand dimensional physics much better than we do." Tae-young was becoming annoyed by all the questions. "Silence, primitives. You are not here to learn. You are here to submit to the will of the Galactic Council." But the humans did not stop asking questions. They wanted to know about other alien species, about galactic politics, about technology, about everything. The Krillians had never encountered anything like this level of curiosity. Then something happened that made Tae-young truly uncomfortable. The alien technology on his ship began interfering with the Soul's Pride systems. The human computers started shutting down, and the life support began to fail. But instead of panicking, the humans immediately went to work. Engineer Jin-ae and her team began rerouting power systems and bypassing damaged circuits. They used basic tools and creative thinking to solve problems that should have been impossible to fix within minutes. They had restored most of their ship's functions using methods that the Krillians had never seen before. The humans took spare parts from completely different systems and made them work together. They wrote new computer programs in real time, and they did it all while remaining calm under pressure. Tae-young watched in amazement as the humans adapted to the crisis. Their response was unlike anything he had seen from other species. Most conquered people either gave up when faced with superior technology or tried to fight with predictable strategies. But these humans did something else entirely. They observed how the Krillian technology worked, and they found ways to defend against it. They asked questions about the interference patterns, and they experimented with different solutions. The most disturbing thing was how they worked together. Every human on the ship contributed to solving the problem. The engineer worked with the scientist, the captain coordinated with the crew, and they all shared information freely. No one tried to take credit or protect their own position. When the crisis was over, Captain Hyanwu asked more questions. Why did your technology interfere with ours? Is this intentional or accidental? Can we modify our systems to be compatible? Tae-young did not answer. Instead, he ordered his warriors to escort the humans to their ship for transport to a galactic council facility. The humans would be processed like all other conquered species, but as they traveled through space toward the processing facility, the humans continued to behave strangely. They observed everything. They asked questions about the Krillian ship's design. They studied the alien technology, and they tried to understand how it worked. The Krillian guards became increasingly uncomfortable. The humans were not afraid enough. They were too curious, too adaptable, too willing to learn. Most conquered species spent their time crying or begging or trying to escape, but the humans were different. They watched the guard rotations and memorized the ship's layout. They learned basic Krillian words, and they tried to communicate with other alien prisoners. They treated their captivity as a learning experience. Navigation officer Minsu spent hours studying the star charts that were displayed on the ship's walls. He memorized the locations of different worlds and the routes between them. Medical officer Ha-young observed how the Krillian biology worked, and she took notes on their armor and their forearm structure. Communications officer J1 listened to the alien radio chatter and began to understand the basic structure of their language. He realized that the Krillians used different tones and frequencies to convey emotional content along with their words. Even while imprisoned, the humans were gathering intelligence. They were learning about their captors, their technology, their society, and their weaknesses. They were preparing for something, though the Krillians could not imagine what. When they arrived at the processing facility, Tae-young filed his report. He recommended that the humans be classified as a potential threat. Despite their primitive technology, he had never seen a species adapt so quickly to new situations or show such intense curiosity about everything around them. But his superiors dismissed his concerns. The humans had no energy weapons, no shields, no faster than light travel. How could they possibly threaten the mighty Galactic Council? As the humans were led into the detention facility, Captain Hyanwu turned to look back at Tae-young. Thank you for showing us your ship, he said. We learned a great deal from the experience. Those words sent a chill through the Krillian commander. The humans had been prisoners on his ship, but they acted like they had been guests. They had been captured and transported against their will, but they seemed almost grateful for the opportunity to learn. For the first time in his career, Tae-young began to wonder if his superiors were making a mistake. These humans were unlike any species he had ever encountered. They were not just primitives with crude technology. They were something else entirely. As the prison doors closed behind the humans, Tae-young made a decision. He would continue to monitor these strange creatures, and he would document everything they did. Something told him that the galaxy was about to change in ways that no one could predict. The apex predators had caught their prey, but they were beginning to realize that they might not understand what they had captured. The detention facility on Nexus Prime was considered the most secure prison in the galaxy. It had been built by the Nexari, using their matter manipulation technology, and had held prisoners from conquered worlds for over 1,000 years. The walls were made of materials that could not be cut, broken, or melted. No one had ever escaped. Captain Hyanwu and his crew were placed in a large cell with dozens of other prisoners from different species. The aliens looked at the humans with a mixture of curiosity and pity. They had all been captured by the Galactic Council, and they all knew that escape was impossible. But the humans did not seem to understand that escape was impossible. Instead, they began doing something that amazed the other prisoners. They started making friends. Engineer Jin-A approached a group of blue-skinned aliens called Zeltharians. She could not speak their language, but she used hand gestures and drawings to communicate. She drew pictures of Earth and showed them mathematical equations. The Zeltharians began to understand that these humans were trying to learn about them. Chief Science Officer Kyung-ho worked with a group of rock-like creatures called Mordians. They communicated by creating different patterns of light on their skin. Kyung-ho used a small flashlight to create simple light patterns and slowly learned their basic language. Medical Officer Ha-young helped treat injured prisoners from many different species. She could not cure alien diseases, but she could ease pain and provide comfort. Her gentle care earned the respect of creatures who had given up hope. Within just a few days, the humans had established communication with most of the prisoners in their section. They learned that some species could phase through certain materials while others could generate electromagnetic pulses. Some could see in different light spectrums while others could sense magnetic fields. The humans began to realize that each species had unique abilities that could be useful if they worked together, but first they had to convince the other prisoners that cooperation was possible. Captain Hyan Wu organized the prisoners into small groups. Mixing different species together, he assigned each group specific tasks like studying the guard rotations or examining the prison structure. The humans served as coordinators, helping different species communicate and work together. The other prisoners had never seen anything like this before in their own societies. Cooperation between different species was rare or impossible, but the humans seemed to naturally understand how to bring different groups together. Engineer Jinne discovered that the prison's security systems were incredibly advanced, but they had one weakness: they were designed to counter individual escape attempts or small group breakouts. They had never been tested against a coordinated effort by dozens of different species working together. The humans spent weeks learning about each prisoner's abilities and the prison's weaknesses. They created detailed maps of the facility and studied the behavior patterns of the guards. They identified weak points in the security systems and developed contingency plans for every possible problem. Communications Officer J1 established a complex communication network that allowed prisoners in different sections to share information. He used a combination of light signals, sound patterns, and physical movements to create a language that all species could understand. The humans also did something else that amazed the other prisoners. They shared everything they learned. They did not keep secrets or try to gain advantages over other prisoners. Instead, they made sure that every species understood the escape plan and could contribute to its success. When the escape finally began, it was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The Zeltharians used their phasing abilities to create initial breaches in the prison walls. The Mordians generated electromagnetic pulses that disabled security cameras and alarm systems. The Vecronians, who could manipulate sound waves, created distractions that confused the guards, but the humans coordinated everything. They adapted the plan in real time as unexpected problems arose. When one group encountered resistance, the humans quickly rerouted other teams to provide support. When security systems activated in unexpected ways, the humans found creative solutions. Navigation Officer Minsu led a team that captured the prison's main computer system. Instead of simply destroying it, they reprogrammed it to work for the prisoners. The computer began opening doors, disabling weapons, and providing information about guard locations. The escape was not just about getting out of prison. The humans had planned something much bigger. They had identified the locations of the guard ships and weapons storage areas. They had mapped the prison's communication systems and transportation networks. As the prisoners fought their way to freedom, the humans made sure that everyone was equipped with stolen weapons and supplies. They provided each species with navigation data that would help them return to their home worlds. They even gave them communication devices that would let them contact resistance movements on other planets. The final phase of the escape was the most shocking. The humans could have simply fled to safety, but instead they chose to stay and fight. They held off the prison guards while the other prisoners boarded stolen ships and escaped to freedom. Captain Hyan Wu and his crew were the last to leave the prison. They transmitted a message throughout the galaxy that would be remembered forever. We are humans from the planet Earth. We do not accept the authority of the Galactic Council. We call upon all free beings to resist tyranny and oppression. The message was broadcast on every communication frequency in the galaxy. It reached billions of beings on thousands of worlds. For the first time in centuries, the oppressed species of the galaxy heard a voice calling for resistance. But the humans were not finished. They had stolen detailed information about the Galactic Council's military positions, prison locations, and political weaknesses. They broadcast this information to resistance movements throughout the galaxy. Within hours of the escape, uprisings began on dozens of world species that had been subjugated for generations. Suddenly, found the courage to fight back. They used the information provided by the humans to attack Council facilities and free their own people. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Their perfect order was crumbling, and it had all started with a group of primitive humans who were supposed to be harmless. The three ruling species held emergency meetings, trying to understand how their impregnable prison had been. Breach Commander Heijin was furious. How could primitive creatures without energy weapons or shields defeat our most advanced security systems? Admiral Wu Sung was disturbed by reports that the humans had somehow developed resistance to Vorthan mind control techniques. The escaped prisoners claimed that the humans had taught them mental exercises that protected them from telepathic domination. Captain So-min was analyzing the prison's computer systems, trying to understand how the humans had reprogrammed them. The techniques they had used were crude but effective. They had found ways to make the technology work for them instead of against them. The most disturbing reports came from the prison guards who had survived the escape. They described humans who fought with desperate courage but also with tactical brilliance. The humans had used the environment as a weapon, turning the prison's own systems against its defenders. But what truly shocked the Galactic Council was what happened next. The freed prisoners did not simply return to their homeworlds and hide. Instead, they began organizing resistance movements. They used the human tactics they had learned to fight back against Council forces. Xiang Ho, the data analyst who had originally warned about the human threat, was called before the Council. His predictions about human adaptability and learning speed had proven correct. The humans had done something that should have been impossible. Galaxy's apex predators were beginning to realize that they had seriously underestimated their prey. The humans were not just primitive creatures with crude technology, they were something far more dangerous. They were natural leaders who could inspire others to fight for freedom. As reports of uprisings came in from across the galaxy, the three ruling species began to understand that their perfect empire was under threat. The humans had shown other species that the Council could be defeated and that resistance was possible. The escape from Nexus Prime had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same again. The predators had learned that sometimes the prey can become the hunters, and that the most dangerous enemies are those who refuse to accept defeat. For the first time in millennia, the rulers of the galaxy felt something they had not experienced in centuries: fear. The stolen ships carrying Captain Haiyan Wu and his crew reached Earth after a journey that took several weeks. They brought with them detailed intelligence about the Galactic Council's empire, and most importantly, proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. President Sujin stood in the emergency session of the United Earth Government, listening to Captain Haiyan Wu's report. The room was filled with leaders from every nation on Earth, and they all faced the same impossible choice: submit to alien rule or fight against enemies with technology thousands of years more advanced than their own defense. Minister General Sangwook studied the intelligence data that the humans had gathered. The Galactic Council controlled millions of worlds and had weapons that could destroy entire planets. The logical choice was surrender, but the humans chose something else entirely. They chose to fight back. General Sangwook began organizing Earth's defense forces, while President Sujin reached out to the freed prisoners who had scattered across the galaxy. Many of them had returned to their homeworlds and were starting resistance movements. They were ready to work with the humans who had given them hope. The humans faced their greatest challenge. Yet they had to build a galactic resistance movement, using primitive technology and limited resources, but they had something the Galactic Council did not expect. They had the ability to inspire others and the willingness to share everything they learned. Dr. De Yun, the scientist who had made the quantum breakthrough, worked with alien researchers to develop new technologies. Her discoveries, combined with alien knowledge, created weapons and tools that no one had imagined before. The humans learned that each alien species had specific weaknesses. The Krillians were incredibly strong, but they were also predictable in their tactics. The Vorthans could control minds, but they were vulnerable to certain types of mental interference. The Nexari could manipulate matter, but they needed time to concentrate. Colonel Yunji led the first major operation against a Galactic Council facility. She took a small team of humans and freed aliens to a Vorthan mind control center on a distant planet. The facility was heavily guarded and seemed impossible to assault, but the humans had learned something during their imprisonment. They had discovered that Vorthons could be overwhelmed by chaotic thought patterns. The humans trained themselves to think in random, scattered ways that created feedback loops in telepathic minds. When Colonel Yunji's team attacked the facility, they did not try to fight the Vorthon guards directly. Instead, they used mental techniques that turned the aliens' greatest strength against them. The Vorthons, who tried to read human minds, were hit by waves of mental static that left them helpless. The humans freed hundreds of prisoners and destroyed the mind control equipment, but more importantly, they recorded everything. They learned and shared it with resistance groups across the galaxy. Major Hyarin led another mission against a Krillian military base. The Krillians expected the humans to fight them in direct combat, where their superior strength and armor would give them an advantage. Instead, the humans used guerrilla tactics. They attacked supply lines, disrupted communications, and avoided direct confrontation. When they did fight, they used the environment as a weapon and struck at weak points in Krillian armor. The humans also did something that confused their enemies. They rescued Krillian prisoners who had been captured by their own government. Many of these prisoners were political dissidents who opposed the Council's rule. Captain Junho specialized in operations against Nexari facilities. The Nexari could manipulate matter at the molecular level, but they needed time and concentration to use their abilities effectively. The humans developed fast-moving tactics that kept the Nexari off balance. They used rapid strikes and constant movement to prevent the aliens from focusing their powers. The humans also learned to use materials that were difficult for the Nexari to manipulate, but the most important thing the humans did was teach other species their methods. Every successful operation included training sessions, where humans shared their knowledge with local resistance fighters. The humans showed other species how to work together. Across racial and cultural barriers, they taught them guerrilla warfare tactics and how to use captured enemy equipment. They shared their intelligence networks and communication systems. General Sang-wook coordinated the growing resistance movement from Earth. He used quantum communication devices developed by Dr. Da-Yun to stay in contact with human teams across the galaxy. He also maintained connections with resistance leaders from dozens of different species. The resistance grew quickly because the humans had solved a problem that had prevented cooperation for centuries. They had found ways to help different species work together effectively. The humans established training centers on liberated worlds where they taught other species everything they knew about warfare tactics, technology, and leadership. They created a network of safe houses and supply lines that stretched across the galaxy, but the humans did not try to control the resistance movement. Instead, they served as advisors and coordinators, helping each species develop its own fighting methods and leadership structure. The Galactic Council watched in horror as their empire began to fall apart. World after world rose in rebellion. Species that had been loyal subjects for generations suddenly turned against their rulers. The three ruling species held emergency meetings trying to understand how primitive humans had created such an effective resistance movement. They had expected the other species to fear human leadership, but instead they seemed to embrace it. Reports came in from across the galaxy describing impossible victories. Small groups of rebels were defeating much larger council forces. Primitive weapons were somehow proving effective against advanced technology. The humans had done something that the council had thought impossible. They had turned the galaxy's diversity into a strength instead of a weakness. Each species contributed its unique abilities to the resistance effort. The council began to realize that they were not just fighting humans, they were fighting a coalition of species that had learned to work together in ways that the galaxy had never seen before. Yang Ho, the data analyst, was called to brief the council on the human threat. He had spent months studying the resistance movement, and he had reached a disturbing conclusion. The humans are not trying to conquer the galaxy, he reported. They are trying to free it. They want to create a new kind of civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. Commander Heijin slammed his fist on the table. How can cooperation defeat superior force? Yang Ho looked at the data from recent battles. The humans have shown other species that working together makes them stronger than any individual race. The resistance forces are using combined tactics that exploit the strengths of multiple species. Admiral Wusung was troubled by reports that human-trained resistance fighters were immune to Vorthan mind control. The humans had developed mental disciplines that protected entire populations from telepathic domination. Captain So Min had analyzed captured human technology and found that it was crude but incredibly effective. The humans combined alien knowledge with their own innovations to create weapons that were perfectly designed to counter Council forces. The Council members began to understand that they were facing something unprecedented in galactic history. They were not fighting another empire that wanted to replace them. They were fighting an idea that could destroy everything they had built. The idea was simple but revolutionary. All species deserved to be free, and all species could work together as equals. As the rebellion spread across the galaxy, the apex predators realized that their prey had become something much more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The humans had become teachers, leaders, and inspiration for every oppressed being in the galaxy. The perfect order of the Galactic Council was crumbling, and in its place something new was being born, a galaxy where cooperation was stronger than domination, where diversity was a strength instead of a weakness, and where freedom was possible for everyone. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey had learned to fight back. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was in chaos for the first time in 1,000 years. Representatives from the three ruling species shouted at each other while holographic displays showed the collapse of their empire. Red markers indicated rebellions on hundreds of worlds, and the markers were spreading faster than they could be contained. Commander Heijin stood before a tactical display showing the latest battle reports. His Krillian warriors were losing fights against opponents they should have crushed easily. The humans had taught other species to fight in ways that made Krillian strength and armor less effective. We are the greatest warriors in the galaxy, he roared at his advisors. How are we being defeated by primitives? With metal projectiles. General Taehyung, who had first encountered the humans, tried to explain. The humans do not fight like other species. They use tactics that we have never seen before. They turn our own strengths against us. Shijin swept the reports off the table with one of his 4 arms. Then we will fight harder, we will use more warriors and better weapons. But Admiral Wusung was having his own problems. The Vorthans had always controlled other species through telepathy, but the humans had developed mental shields that protected entire populations from mind control. The humans have trained resistance fighters to think in patterns that cause feedback in our telepathic networks. Wusung reported. His white eyes glowed with frustration. When we try to read their minds, we are hit with mental static that leaves us helpless. Captain So Min flowed anxiously around her section of the chamber. The Nexari had tried to use their matter manipulation abilities against human-led forces, but the humans had developed countermeasures for everything. They move too fast for us to focus our abilities, she said in her liquid voice. They use rapid strikes and constant movement to prevent us from using our powers effectively. The 3 leaders looked at each other and realized they were facing something unprecedented in galactic history. They were losing a war against supposedly primitive opponents. Yang Ho, the data analyst, stood nervously before the council. His predictions about the human threat had proven correct, and now he was the only one who seemed to understand what was happening. The humans have done something that we did not think was possible, he reported. They have united species that have never worked together before. They have created a resistance movement that grows stronger with each victory. How is this possible? Heijin demanded. Different species cannot work together effectively. We learned this thousands of years ago when we tried to create cooperative governments. The humans are different, Young Ho explained. They do not try to control other species. Instead, they help each species develop its own strengths and then coordinate those strengths into effective fighting forces. The council members were silent as they considered this information. Everything they knew about galactic politics suggested that cooperation between species was impossible. Different races had different needs, different abilities, and different goals, but the humans had somehow made it work. They had created a coalition that was more effective than any single species could be alone. Admiral Wusung made a decision that shocked everyone in the chamber. We must use the Devourer fleet. The Devourer fleet was the Council's ultimate weapon. a collection of planet-killing ships that had been held in reserve for the most extreme threats. The fleet had not been used in over 500 years, Captain. Somin flowed upward in alarm. The Devourer fleet is for extinction-level threats, not for dealing with rebellions. This is an extinction-level threat, Wu Sung replied. If we do not stop the humans now, their ideas will spread throughout the galaxy. Our entire civilization will collapse. The Council voted to unleash the Devourer fleet. With one target, the complete destruction of Earth, the humans had started the rebellion, and destroying their homeworld would end it. Admiral Kang Ho was chosen to command the fleet. He was unusual among Council forces because he was actually human. He had been captured years earlier and had undergone mental conditioning to serve the Council loyally. The Devourer fleet consisted of 12 massive ships, each capable of destroying an entire planet. The ships were equipped with quantum weapons that could tear apart matter at the atomic level. Nothing could survive their attack. As the fleet prepared to depart, Young Ho made one final report to the Council. The humans have been preparing for this possibility, he said. They have been moving their most important people and resources away from Earth. Jin laughed. It does not matter where they hide. Once we destroy their homeworld, the other species will lose hope. The rebellion will collapse without human leadership. But Young Ho was not finished. The humans have also been broadcasting technical information throughout the galaxy. They have taught other species how to build advanced weapons and ships. Min flowed aggressively toward the data analyst. You are suggesting that primitive species can match our technology. The humans have shown them how to combine their natural abilities with captured Council technology, Young Ho replied. The resistance forces are becoming stronger every day. The Council dismissed Young Ho's warnings. They believed that destroying Earth would end the human threat and restore their empire. But they had made a critical mistake. They did not understand that the humans had been planning for this moment. As the Devourer fleet traveled toward Earth, human intelligence networks throughout the galaxy tracked its movement. Intelligence Officer Na Young, who had been working undercover in the Council's command structure, sent detailed information about the fleet's capabilities and route. The humans did not try to stop the fleet from reaching Earth. Instead, they used its approach as a signal for their final gambit. Every human ship in the galaxy received the same message: the time for hiding is over. Today, we fight for the future of all free beings. Captain Hyan Wu broadcast a message to every resistance group in the galaxy. Today the tyrants come to destroy our world, but they will find that we are ready. We have turned our entire solar system into a weapon. The humans had spent months preparing for this moment. They had hidden weapons throughout the solar system and had positioned ships at key locations. Dr. De Yoon's quantum research had led to the development of gravitational manipulation devices that could bend space and time. When the Devourer fleet arrived at Earth, they found what appeared to be a defenseless world. The human ships that confronted them were small and primitive. The Council forces prepared to begin their bombardment, but as the first quantum weapons fired, the trap was revealed. The humans had surrounded their solar system with artificial wormholes that redirected the attacks back at the attackers. The Devourer fleet found themselves firing on their own ships. The humans also activated gravitational weapons that created massive distortions in space-time. The Council ships were caught in gravitational fields that crushed their hulls and tore them apart. Admiral Kang Ho tried to retreat but found that the humans had sealed off all escape routes. The entire solar system had become a maze of gravitational traps and spatial distortions. The battle lasted only minutes. The mighty Devourer fleet was completely destroyed, not by superior technology, but by human creativity and planning. The apex predators had walked into a trap set by their supposed prey. As news of the fleet's destruction spread throughout the galaxy, the Galactic Council's authority collapsed completely. Species that had remained loyal to the Council switched sides and joined the rebellion. The three ruling species found themselves isolated and outnumbered. Their perfect empire was gone, and they were the ones who were now being hunted. The galaxy's apex predators had learned too late that they had seriously underestimated their prey. The humans had not just defended themselves, they had turned the entire galactic order upside down. The age of domination was ending, and the age of cooperation was beginning. The predators had become the prey, and the prey had learned to fight as one united force. The destruction of the Devourer fleet marked the end of the Galactic Council's 1,000-year reign across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for generations celebrated their freedom while the former rulers found themselves facing a new reality. President Sujin stood in the rebuilt Assembly Hall on Earth, but this time she was not alone. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the chamber, all of them working together to create something that had never existed before, a truly free galactic civilization. The humans had surprised everyone again. Instead of replacing the Galactic Council with their own empire, they had created something entirely different. The Free Worlds Alliance was based on voluntary cooperation and mutual defense. Every species had an equal voice regardless of their size or technology level. Commander Heijin sat in the chamber not as a ruler but as a representative of the Krillian people. Many of his species had struggled to adapt to the new order. They had been warriors and conquerors for so long that they did not know how to be anything else, but the humans had shown them a different path. Captain Henwo worked with Krillian leaders to help them redirect their warrior culture toward protecting others instead of dominating them. The Krillians became the Alliance's peacekeepers, using their strength to defend smaller species. Admiral Wusung had faced the greatest challenge of all. The Vorthans had controlled other species through telepathy for centuries, but the new galactic order was based on free will and choice. Dr. Dayun worked with Vorthan scientists to develop new uses for their telepathic abilities. Instead of controlling minds, they learned to facilitate communication between species and to provide mental healing for trauma victims. Captain Somin and the Nexari found new purpose in using their matter manipulation abilities to help rebuild worlds that had been damaged by the Council's rule. They worked with human engineers to create new technologies that benefited all species. The transformation was not easy. Many members of the former ruling species struggled to accept their new roles. Some tried to restart the old system of domination, but they found that the galaxy had changed too. Mukyung-ho, the data analyst who had first warned about the human threat, became one of the Alliance's most valuable members. His ability to analyze patterns and predict outcomes helped the new government avoid many potential problems. The humans established academies throughout the galaxy, where they taught other species the skills that had made their rebellion successful. They shared their knowledge of tactics, cooperation, and leadership with anyone who wanted to learn. General Sangwook became the first commander of the Alliance Defense Force, a military organization that included members from every species. The force was designed to protect freedom rather than impose control. Engineer Jin'e led teams that traveled to devastated worlds, helping to rebuild infrastructure and establish new governments. Her work showed that cooperation between species could accomplish things that no single race could achieve alone. The Alliance faced its first major test when reports came in of a new threat from beyond the galaxy's edge. A massive alien fleet was approaching from deep space, and it was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. In the old system, the Galactic Council would have decided how to respond, and the other species would have been forced to follow their orders, but the Alliance worked differently. Every species contributed to the defense effort. The Krillians provided warriors, the Vorthans offered intelligence gathering, the Nexari created new weapons, and hundreds of other species added their own unique abilities. The humans coordinated the response, but they did not control it. They helped different species work together, while allowing each race to contribute in its own way. Captain Hanwoo stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, surrounded by officers from dozens of different species. The ship itself was a symbol of the new order, combining human creativity with alien technology to create something more advanced than either could achieve alone. When the alien fleet arrived, they expected to find a galaxy divided by conflict and easy to conquer. Instead, they found a united civilization that was ready to defend itself. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Hundreds of species fought side by side, using combined tactics that exploited the strengths of each race. The humans provided coordination and strategy, while their allies contributed firepower and specialized abilities. The alien invaders were defeated not by superior technology, but by the power of cooperation. They had expected to face scattered resistance, but instead they encountered a galaxy that fought as one united force. After The victory President Sujin addressed. The galaxy from the Alliance Assembly Hall. The threat from beyond reminded us that freedom must